Welcome back to another guide in my Learning to Brid series. This guide will highlight the most important components within a pure brid fight. This guide will cover basic tactics and good habits to develop for eating, prayers, movement, using special attacks, and fake switches. Developing good methods of eating in a fight is really important to making sure you don't get out DPS'd by your opponent or spam panic eat your whole inventory before having to tally. This is my inventory setup. I have main high healing food, which can be sharks, manta rays, or anglerfish, although be aware you should not use anglerfish unless you're at least 93 HP, as well as some Quran bombs for combo food and Ceradomin brews. Because there are so many things to keep track of in a fight, it can be challenging to remember to keep an eye on your HP, and before you know it, you get KO'd by a 10 bold. If you are just beginning to brid, make maintaining your health a priority, and soon it will become a lot easier to quickly eat as you get used to the pace of the fights. Then you can focus more on returning the damage to win fights. There are several different strategies on eating. I will cover the main tactics I use while in fights, and feel free to adjust them to your own style. Every brid should use brews. They heal 12 HP, and although they lower your stats and require super restore to counter that, they heal you without delaying the speed of your attacks, allowing you to maintain DPS on your opponent. I tend to sip brews instead of eating regular food if I'm getting close to a special attack opportunity and want to keep the pressure on my opponent so he does not eat back up to full HP. If you are not used to using brews and want to learn, my suggestion is to get into the motion of brewing twice or 3 times, then restoring once. If you need to heal when restoring, combo it with another food. When I began using brews, I would always range twice while drinking 2 doses of brew, then restore and mage. Getting into this rhythm made my fighting a little predictable, but got me comfortable with using brews until I could brew and be used to using blitz and ranging to mix up the pattern without throwing myself off. Another useful trick I use with brews is to combo it with a Quran bomb. Brew to Quran bomb heals a total of 30 HP and only delays you for a tick or two rather than an entire attack cycle like regular food. You can combine all 3 types of food in one game tick if you click high healing food first, then a brew, then a Quran bomb. This can heal up to 50 HP and is great to get used to doing for quick heals if your opponent goes in for a special attack. As for the last eating tip, it is important to get used to where everything is in your inventory so that you can automatically click in the right spots to heal without thinking. Find a setup that works for you and stick to it. A good way to learn how to eat quickly is fighting very good brids, as they will do a lot of damage on you and you will need to be quick with your eating to survive. There are just a few basic tips for using prayers when bridding. First, decide on your prayer setup. This is only applicable to those that use third-party clients to change their prayer books around. These clients can also offer screen overlays to help you click on the right prayer when swapping between tabs. Second, I highly recommend you practicing and developing the muscle memory for prayers for a while before beginning to brid. It will make the learning curve a little bit easier with less deaths. I covered some ways for that in my first guide. Third, when you are in a fight, try to keep in mind what your next attack will be, and change to Eagle Eye, Mystic Might, or Ultimate Strength before you do the switch, so that you can make switching and attacking your opponent a little bit smoother. Lastly, when beginning to brid, whenever you are below about 50 hit points, automatically pray melee. It will help you a bit to get back on your feet, eat up, without worrying too much about getting KO'd. Often new brids tend to panic when they get comboed and try to do too many things at once and die. By just praying melee, then eating up, you focus yourself to get back into it with a smaller chance of dying. This is also something you can do if you get hit by a big barrage, because that is most common time that someone is going to go in for a special attack. I also highly recommend fighting a friend in Clan Wars and focusing mostly on prayer switches to develop that muscle memory quickly. Often the outcome of an NH fight is determined by movement and freezes. I recommend using a third-party client that gives you an overlay of how long you will be frozen for. Some are better than others, but find what works for you. By keeping an eye on when you are frozen, you can plan to use your special attack when you get unfrozen. Your position with your opponent can make a difference as well. If you are right next to each other, you have the ability to use melee weapons, but they do as well. If you are 1 or 2 squares away,
you are within a distance that melee weapons can attack in one tick, meaning there is no delay from when a player moves to attack the other player and when the attack goes off. Any distance further than that, you will see your opponent moving in to use the melee attack, which can be helpful if you want to back off to heal up and give yourself time to react to an opponent's moves. As a side note for 50 attack brids, unless you want to melee your opponent with an ancient staff or granite hammer smack, keep your distance from your opponent and don't go right next to them, because if they have a dragon scimitar, that gives them a big advantage. A good place to practice movement is in clan wars with a friend. I will cover the various common special attacks used in PvP and how to effectively use each one. The G-Maul. The G-Maul is extremely overpowered against one defense. Generally, the max stack of the G-Maul is above the HP level of your opponent. Although it is not a well-liked special attack weapon in brids, because it generally relies more on luck than skill, it is still very powerful. There are several ways you can pull off the G-Maul. If attacking an opponent with a weapon that has a spec bar, you have ultimate strength on already, you click the G-Maul, spec bar twice, then the opponent as quick as you can. If you do not have a spec bar, you have ultimate strength on, click the G-Maul, then your opponent, then back to the spec bar twice when it appears as quickly as possible. A better way to use the G-Maul in bridding is to hide the G-Maul with a pot trick. You pot, equip the G-Maul, then click ultimate strength, double click the spec bar, then your opponent, and it goes off instantly right out of the eating animation. This makes it a lot more unpredictable and difficult to prey against, as you don't see it coming. When using the last method of G-Mauling, I found it most effective being 2 squares away from your opponent. If you're standing next to them, sometimes the G-Maul will go off on different ticks, meaning that both halves of the spec go off on different ticks, delaying the amount of damage spread out, making it easy for your opponent to react and out-eat it. The DDS. The DDS is the most common spec weapon because it can hit extremely hard and it only uses 25% of the spec bar. Most often, people will go in for the DDS special attack by hiding it with a pot trick. This is typically the most effective way of surprising someone with a special attack. In addition to using the pot trick, if you are standing away from your opponent, you want to time when you click back to your opponent after priming your DDS right when your next attack is due to go off. That way your character won't move over to your opponent and wait until it can attack and alert your opponent of what's coming, but rather your character will attack right as you move. The timing changes slightly depending on how far away you are from your opponent. If you're 3 squares away, you will need to click 1 tick earlier than if you are 2 squares away. In order to get used to this delay and becoming comfortable with attack speeds, I suggest that while you train, click on the NPC you are training on every time you think you will land an attack, and try and match up your clicks with the speed of your attacks. Remember that crossbows have different speeds than barraging, and so you need to get comfortable with all the different weapons you are using to get the timing right. The DDS to G-Maul. A very powerful combination is the DDS to the Granite Maul. This combination needs a bit of practice as you need quick clicks to make it effective. The easiest way to pull it off is to go in for the DDS as described before, and as soon as you get an XP drop, click your Granite Maul, then immediately the spec bar. Generally, when you are within melee distance and click the Granite Maul spec bar, it will automatically go off. Sometimes it does not, and you can ensure that it will go off by clicking back to your opponent after clicking the spec bar. If you get really quick at these clicks, you can even add a Dragon Throwing Axe to the end of this combo, landing a lot of damage within a small amount of time. Claws to G-Maul. Claws are very powerful, although I definitely suggest using the Granite Maul with it in the same way you use the DDS to G-Maul combo. Claws don't have the highest KO potential on their own, however they're so good because their average hit is much higher than other weapons. Combined with the Granite Maul, it makes it a very reliable combo to KO your opponent. The AGS to G-Maul. Very similar to Claws to G-Maul, although the max hit is higher than Claws, but won't hit high as often. The AGS has enough KO potential on its own to make it worthwhile using for 2 specs rather than using just 1 with the G-Maul. PKing at green dragons is a good opportunity to practice special attacks, especially because green dragon killers make easy targets that still try to out-eat your DPS, so you can practice your combos without worrying too much about dying. Clan Wars with a friend is also an excellent option. A key part to dealing consistent damage to your opponent throughout a fight is faking with your gear switches. Switching does have a little bit of strategy to it as well. You do not want to be too predictable with what attack you will do next. If you swap to range right after barraging, your opponent will have several ticks to react and change his prayer before you attack again. If you wait just a little bit before switching, your opponent will likely keep Protect from Mage on because he sees you haven't switched yet. After delaying a little bit, which was talked about in special attacks with the DDS, you swap to range and click on your opponent right as your next attack is due, and they won't have time to react and they get hit off their prayer. You can also double fake your opponent by immediately changing to different gear after an attack to make them change their prayer, then swap back to attack them off prayer. If you get quick enough, you can do even a triple fake between attacks without slowing down, and with 3 different attack styles to change from, it can be incredibly difficult to predict what you will do next. A good place to practice this is once again killing dragon killers, as they don't fight back much and they give you a chance to do more switching to get used to it. Thanks for watching, guys. This was my second episode in my series of learning to NH brid. Feel free to subscribe and tune in next time when I cover more of the complicated and in-depth strategies to pure birding.